This week's The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon episode Paris sera toujours Paris, which means Paris will always be Paris. We enter post-apocalyptic Paris for the first time. Here's your spoiler warning. Beware. This episode begins with one of the most bizarre things the entire Walking Dead franchise has ever seen. We know that Daryl only has a fleeting interest in the mission he's undertaking to accompany Lauren to Paris. What he really wants is to get hold of a radio and get back home to the United States. Daryl, Isabel, Lauren, and Sylvie set out on the road to northern France where they will meet up with their group at a place called The Nest. Father Jean created the path that led them through Paris, but Isabel changed the route and took Daryl to the City of Angers. Just outside Paris, they met a former musician. We don't know his name, but Isabel refers to him as the contact. He has a radio, but it doesn't work. He leads them to a theater where he conducts an orchestra of walkers. Like, literally, all of the walkers are attached to instruments and growl along to the classical tune Bolero by Ravel. It's easily one of the most bizarre things the Walking Dead franchise has ever aired. I liked it a lot, although it doesn't really have any bearing on the rest of the episode, but Daryl gets frustrated looking into this and declares that they are heading to Paris. Isabel says it's too dangerous, but there's danger everywhere. The scenery around Paris is spectacular. It really shows the budget that's gone into this series. Everything from crashed cars to ominous writing painted on walls tells a story. Daryl sees the word pouvoir spray painted on a car. He's seen it before and asks Isabel about it. She says it's a movement that started after the outbreak. The group rules most of Paris under the leadership of a woman called Jeanette. They pass the graveyard where Jim Morrison is buried. This is also where they meet the Union d'Espoir Paris group led by Falou. We also meet notable members of the community like Bastien and Nadine. Falou and his group know all about Father Jean's beliefs about Lauren. He leads them to their home on the rooftops of Paris. The community has 64 people, including a lot of children. The building faces the Eiffel Tower, which has had the top taken off. Apparently, a helicopter crashed into it in the beginning of the apocalypse, and now it creaks ominously in the wind, which is nice, and Lauren is intrigued by it. Daryl asks about a radio, but the group uses pigeons to communicate. That's not going to get him to America, so Daryl decides to leave. Falou says they can trade for all sorts of things in the city. Isabel knows where they can get currency to trade and says they will go the next day. Lauren's reputation precedes him. As soon as he enters the community, he's surrounded by people. This is the first time he's been treated like this after growing up alone in an abbey. Given his reputation, he's become a beacon of hope. Nothing proves this more than when he approaches a woman, Sonia, who has lost her family. Falou says Sonia's husband just died, and no one has been able to console her. They watch Lauren hug the lady, and she smiles at him. This was a really poignant moment for Lauren. It shows the responsibility and power he holds. Meanwhile, Caudron decides to kill Daryl because he is thirsty for vengeance and is grieving. Remember that Daryl killed his brother back in episode 1? Caudron goes to the Pouvoir headquarters to speak with Jeanette. He wants to find Daryl and says he will do so to avenge his brother. Jeanette takes him up on the offer, and he follows her into a lab and watches as scientists conduct experiments on walkers. The walker in the room breaks his chains, and his head seemingly implodes in a hail of blood. It seems they are trying to evolve these normal walkers into super-strength variants. This sequence is a very interesting one, where I am going to break down this sequence in a separate video and reveal a lot of interesting theories. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Further proceeding with Daryl having fulfilled his mission, he now sets his sights on trying to get home, and Isabel is there to help him. But first, Isabel takes Daryl to her old apartment in Paris. Daryl finds pictures of Isabel and Quinn. They used to date. Isabel says when she was young and stupid. Isabel finds a photo of Lily in front of the Eiffel Tower and puts it in her pocket. She goes to the fireplace and pulls out a box of drugs, jewelry, and credit cards to use as a bargaining chip for information on how to get Daryl home. They share stories about who they were before the apocalypse. Isabel thinks they were both broken until the world ended. I'm really enjoying Isabel's story so far. Her character is really fleshed out with a compelling backstory. Her connection with Daryl is very interesting. They've both been through a lot, clearly, and they are able to confide in each other. Daryl decides it's time to leave, but walkers fill up the hallway. They have to go out the back that leads to a courtyard. Isabel sees the walker of a young girl who lived in her building, and she is shocked. They move slowly through the courtyard and walkers start falling off of the building. The strange thing is, the walkers get up and keep going. These walkers all have the acid blood, like the ones that Daryl encountered when he first arrived. The walkers surround Isabel while Daryl tries to clear the brush that grew over the gate. He stabs one of the walkers and moves it to the gate. He pushes the walker up against the brush to burn it off. Once the brush is gone, he opens the gate and they leave. Isabel takes one last look at the little girl before leaving. Laurent, Sylvie, Falou, and his people meet Daryl and Isabel near a tunnel. Isabel gives Laurent the photo of his mother before they set off into the catacombs. The path leads to Club Demonond. Falou says they can find someone there to help Daryl. The club is exactly that, a club with drinking, dancing, and some priceless artwork. It might be years into the zombie apocalypse. Paris's nightlife is as vibrant as ever. France isn't giving up its culture that easily. Daryl, Isabel, and Laurent enter the catacombs together. Daryl meets a guy named Bernard who says he knows people who can help, but he wants payment up front. Isabel shows him her bag of drugs and Bernard is impressed. One of the guards nods at someone behind Daryl and Daryl gets uneasy. He grabs Isabel's bag and says it's time to go. Bernard pulls a knife on Daryl and Daryl punches him. Quinn walks up and warns Bernard for bringing a weapon into the club. He smiles and says hello to Isabel, who is surprised to see him. Quinn is interested to know who Daryl is to Isabel and what he wants. Daryl just wants to go home and Quinn thinks he can help him. Meanwhile, Sylvie dances with one of Falou's men while Laurent listens to the woman singing. The singer's name is Anna. He tells her that she sings very good and shows her the picture of his mother. Anna is wearing a necklace with the Eiffel Tower on it. Laurent says he likes it, so Anna gives it to him. He runs to show Isabel and meets Quinn before being sent away back to the rooftops with Sylvie. Daryl asks Isabel if everything is okay and she pretends it is. Quinn steps away to the bar and Anna comes up behind him and wraps her arms around him. He pushes her away while ordering a bottle of champagne. He tells her he has business to attend to and walks away. Quinn takes Isabel and Daryl up to his office. The place used to be a hideout for generals in World War II. There are a lot of artifacts, art, wine, and other spirits stored in his office. Quinn offers Isabel a glass of champagne, and she declines. Isabel updates him on her life. After she and Lily left him, she became a nun. Unfortunately, Lily died during childbirth. Quinn is sorry to hear about Lily, but says she should have told him about Lily and his son. Quinn says it was a mistake that Isabel obviously knew nothing about. She thinks that's why Quinn wanted to leave Lily behind and blames him for her death. Quinn grabs her hand and reminds her that he saved her when she tried to commit suicide. Daryl starts to intervene, but she quickly changes the subject. Quinn says he will help Daryl if Isabel stays with him. Daryl says no, but Isabel is ready to agree. Daryl says it's time to go and walks out the door, and Isabel follows him, but she is angry. Daryl says he was only trying to help. She says she doesn't need a hero. She's just trying to help Daryl keep his promise. Sylvie sits with Laurent as he lays in bed. He asks about the nest, and she says it will be safe. There are more people at the nest who believe as they do. He also wonders why Sonia said he made her feel loved. Sylvie says he gives people hope. He looks at the photo of his mother while he lays in bed. Back at club, Caudron arrives with his men and they are carrying their weapons. Quinn greets them and says he has an arrangement with Jeanette that his place is off limits. Caudron says he's looking for Daryl and knows that he was at the club. Daryl packs his things and Isabel apologizes for getting angry. He doesn't think they need him anymore, but she tries to change his mind. She says Laurent will be really sad to learn he left. Daryl says she needs to stop lying to Laurent and tell him about Quinn. He says the kid deserves to know who he is so he can make up his own mind. Isabel says Daryl doesn't understand how special Laurent is. In Daryl's opinion, Isabel believes Laurent is a gift from God because the world is so messed up, or maybe he's just a regular kid who lived. Maybe that's her miracle. Laurent hears their argument and gets out of bed to yell at them. He says he hates them both and runs away. Caudron and his guerriers arrive at the rooftops, and he immediately spots Daryl. Daryl tells Isabel to find Laurent and meet him at her old apartment. Daryl makes his way to the next building over and Caudron follows him. The guerriers go around the building to stop Daryl. Daryl trips Caudron to kill him, but they end up fighting. He is able to get Caudron in a chokehold, but the guerriers stop him with gunfire. Daryl gets away, but ends up on a weak spot on the roof, and it falls in and leaves us on a cliffhanger. I'm sure he'll be fine, and I'm sure Caudron will be fine too. This was another solid episode. There's a lot to like. Entering post-apocalyptic Paris for the first time was a joy. Also, I really like the idea of an underground community in the catacombs. And of course, that zombie orchestra was crazy and bizarre and glorious. I can't wait to see next week's episode. So, what's your thoughts on this episode? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. In the meantime, you can check out my other videos that might hook your interest. Have a nice day. Bye.